Hey there everyone, and welcome to a new video for Football Manager 2016. Alright, today I'm going to show you guys how we do opposition analysis. So anyone who's watched the Let's Play series has probably seen me do this multiple times before. But for anyone new to the channel or new to the game, I thought it would be a good way to actually just show you how I go about it and some sort of key things that you can look out for. Alrighty, so the first thing I'm going to look at, I'm going to show you how to get into the actual team reports. So the easiest way to probably do it is jump into the schedule, click on the team you're going to be playing next. For example, in this for our save here, it's going to be Utrecht. And jump down here to team reports. So it's very, very important that here that you actually note that you've actually got to have a scout. So if you come into scouting, into assignments, you've actually got to have a scout set up to be doing next opposition, a next opposition assignment here. If you don't have this set up, you won't be able to get any information from those team reports where we just were just then. So very, very important you do have someone set up to that, and it is ongoing. So if you set up your scouting manually, very, very important that you do have someone set up to do that. Alright, we're going to jump back into Utrecht, and alright, so you jump into the team reports tab here, down to their senior squad, and we're first going to jump into the summary screen here. Generally don't look at most of this information up the top here, because we'll sort of find most of this out as we go through. What I'm actually looking at here is these sort of 4 bits of information down here. So you've got their form player, their highest average rating player, their top goal scorer, and their most assists, where their most assists have come from. So I'm not going to read too much into this now, but this has sort of given me a bit of an indication of players that I have to keep an eye on once we do the rest of our analysis. So once we've done the rest of our analysis, we'll probably come back and have a look at some of these guys here and actually sort of look at if we actually need to shut some of these guys down. Alrighty, so that's that one done there. Next thing we actually look at is the overview screen here. And very, very important, you actually do have this little tab here set to current abilities compared to your players, so compared to Ajax's players in this example. It is the default, so it should be on that, but just double check that. So basically what this is this screen actually shows you a comparison of their best 11, or I should say their best available 11. So anyone sort of injured or suspended won't show up in this one. But yeah, and so this as we can actually see here, it's compared to our players, their current abilities. So the first thing I notice here is that most of Utrecht's players aren't anywhere near as good as ours. But we actually see here, Mr. Yasin here is their best player in a couple of positions. So we actually jump in here into his screen quickly. And we do actually notice from the summary screen, if you jump back into that and again quickly, he's their highest average rating player. So now we've actually seen that 2 bits of information, we're actually going to take a bit of a closer look at him. So you can play, like we said, through the midfield or the defensive midfield, and to get an indication of actually where he's going to play, jump down here into overview information, and actually here into games played. So he actually has played all his games this season actually at midfield, so it's pretty likely actually will start at midfield again, not at defensive mid. So that's a bit of good information to have. Jump back into here, so we know that he's going to play at defensive midfield centre here. Could get a bit of an indication to hear about the best roles and duties, so maybe a bit of an indication about what he's going to play. Generally, I like to look at these stats though. So physicals aren't anything amazing. He's not particularly quick. Decent technicals, 14 technique, 14 passing, 12 first touch. Vision isn't that amazing. Off the ball isn't that amazing. So for me, that sort of initially says he's not going to be particularly an offensive-minded player. His flair as well isn't particularly great. He's got some decent mentals though. So for me, he should be a sort of a solid, as we actually say here, sort of a solid like ball-winning midfielder or box-to-box, sort of someone who works really hard, but shouldn't maybe unlock a whole lot of defenses and stuff. But then if we actually look down here, he actually does have 4 assists in 13 games, which is interesting. So definitely someone we'll keep an eye at, sort of further down the track. Another thing we actually look at here is the strength of his feet here. So he's weaker on his right foot, so we could potentially show him onto his right foot to hopefully maybe limit his impact. Does sort of have a bit of a flow-through effect that actually can change the way your team defends, because you'll think if he's playing in midfield centre here and we show him onto his right foot, we're going to basically means our defender's going to take up a position to the left of him over here, and it's going to open up all this right area potentially. So that can sort of sometimes leave holes in your defence or holes in your tactics. So do sort of be aware of that if you actually show your players onto a certain foot, that you actually know the effects it's going to have on your team. Can look at preferred moves here to get a bit of an indication about how he plays as well. So we actually see here a lot of passing ones. So looks for the pass, long range passes, and switch ball to the other flanks, which is interesting. So that's some good information to know. Alright, so that's that one. Jump back into the overview screen here. So nothing really else jumps out at me here. There's not really any other standout players. We've already seen Lake James as their top goal scorer, so we'll keep an eye on him. Yeah, so that is good. Alright, so that's all we need to look at there. Alright, so next one we look at here is the tactics screen. And there's two key pieces of information we're going to look at here. I never look at the tactics phase, to be honest. I don't see the point, it doesn't interest me. What you look at here is actually tactics used. First thing we're looking for is the tactic they start with. So we can see here they've actually started all 20 games they've played this season with the 4-2-3-1. So now that we know that, we can jump into the tactics screen here, and there we go, that's their 4-2-3-1. So we know that they're actually going to start with this formation there. That's pretty much stock standard. Done, which is fine. So we jump into tactics again. Next thing we're looking for is any changes that they make during a game. So you can actually get that by, so for example here, the 4-4-2. They've never started with this formation, but they have used it. So we know that basically this is, what that indicates to me is they actually changed during a game to actually, you've actually changed to a 4-4-2 during a game. So it does seem to be a little bit less likely in this version of the game, in FM16, that teams will actually change formations. In last year's version of the game, FM15, it seemed to basically happen anytime a team went behind, they would actually change formation and sort of to some pretty outlandish formation to try and get back into the game. This year what seems to happen is that they won't actually necessarily always change formation. Some teams do, some teams don't. But they'll actually sort of stay within the formation, but actually change the way it plays. So for example, Utrecht here may not change to the 4-4-2, they may stick with the 4-2-3-1, but they could actually maybe go more attacking, or they could sit back more and try and hit us on the counter, or things like that. So just because they don't change formation doesn't mean they won't change the style of play, so do keep an indication of that. So we know that the likelihood of them changing to a 4-4-2 is fairly low, but it will be something I keep an eye out on, maybe later in the game, and just make sure that they don't do that, because obviously a 4-4-2 is very different to a 4-2-3-1, so it would necessitate some changes from my end if they did do that. Alrighty, so that's all we need to look at there. I'm not going to look at last match facts or stats. I don't generally find those to be particularly interesting or useful. Next thing we're going to look at here is the goals screen. This is probably the most important area when you're doing it, opposition analysis, probably apart from the tactics screen, to be honest, for me. It's probably where I get the most benefit, but that's just me personally. Alright, the first thing I'm going to notice, draw you guys' attention to here is this green area here is the goals and assists. So it's same on both these tabs. The goals and assists that Utrecht themselves have scored. Very important that you recognize that. This red area here is the goals and assists that Utrecht have conceded. So the top part is the scored, bottom half is conceded. So you can actually get two pieces of information there. Also do keep take into consideration that it is a full pitch and it is the same side at both ends. So for example here, this is their right. If you look at it here, for example, their assists, this is their attacking area right here, and this is their defensive right here. So for example, they're defending their fullback right, and they're attacking midfielder right. So it doesn't swap around or anything like that. A lot of people sort of get confused by that, so do sort of be aware of that. Alright, so the first thing we'll look at here is goal locations. Straight away, I haven't really noticed anything major here. Generally, what you're looking for is most goals you're ever going to find are actually scored through the middle. So this goal locations is actually basically where the shot that actually went into the net was taken from. So obviously different from assists, and yeah, so basically generally what I'm looking for here is actually goals being scored out wide, either out wide in these two sort of side penalty areas, or even outside the penalty box here. Generally, obviously you won't get sort of many sort of in this outer ring out here, obviously, because that'd be like your really long range freak goals. And yeah, so for example here they've got a few from the right out here. So for example, that sort of sometimes that can indicate inside forwards running in and actually taking shots from sort of this wider area here. So generally it doesn't seem like they do that a whole lot. Most of their goals come through the middle. And also if you're getting like a lot of goals through these sort of areas out here, that sort of would generally to me would indicate long shots. So if you sort of see a lot of numbers out here, you could look at, go through their team and actually look at who's their best long shot players. Are they actually getting the goals? And if yes, maybe you should actually close them down a lot quicker, so they actually don't have time to get those long shots away. So straight away, there's not really anything major there. I'm not too concerned about. And the same down here, they're not really conceding anywhere in particular. Maybe a little bit on their right, but it's probably not enough numbers to make any major changes. So that's fine. Going to jump into the assist locations next. This is very, very important for me. This can really give an indication about how the team can actually potentially play. So the first thing I notice here is this 9 here. So obviously they've gotten their most assists from the this wide left area here. Generally this would be sort of attacking midfielder lefts, or wide midfielders on the left. They've got a few from sort of deep, which I'm not too worried about that. Generally, sometimes this can indicate long balls, although not necessarily, but sometimes if you get a lot of here, can indicate sort of like some long balls if they get long ball football. Yeah, so we've seen the 9 here. If we look at their conceding area, nothing jumps out at me here really. They concede out wide a little bit more than they do through the middle, which is potentially indicate they could play potentially narrow, so maybe they block out this sort of midfield area, this sort of central area, and maybe they leave a little bit more space on the flanks, but not necessarily. I probably should point out here that anytime you're looking at any of these stats or these numbers, don't be very, very aware of actually reading too much into them. You got to think, don't know the context in actually what all these numbers necessarily mean. You're just basically making little inferences. You're making generally for me, what I find personally, I find this most useful to actually get things for me to watch, for areas that I need to keep an eye on during the game. Like I'm not going to make any major changes probably based on most of this stuff. There's little bits and pieces I've already noticed, like maybe closing down Mr. Yassin a little bit more. I'm going to take a closer look at their attacking midfielder left area as well. See who's been playing there, who's been getting the assists, if we need to shut them down. Generally those are the type of things I play, but in terms of maybe if they've got some more space out wide, I'm not going to make any changes about that straight away, but I'm going to keep an eye out during the game once I watch it, and keep an eye out and see if they are leaving some more space out wide, or maybe if they're attacking down their left-hand side more, if they're trying to overload that, and then if we're actually getting maybe overloaded defensively, if we need to make some changes. So that's what I'm looking for, basically looking for little key things, little areas that I need to keep an eye on, and not necessarily make any changes. So you want to be very, very careful of making too many changes based on all these numbers. Alrighty, so we've just seen there, we've got a couple of interesting things there, like we said, the wide stuff here and the attacking midfielder left. So what I'm actually doing now, so you jump into here and look at actually who's playing on their attacking midfielder left. So we've got Christopher Peterson played there last time around, but he's only played one game, so obviously he's not their regular guy. So I'm actually thinking this guy, Rilwan Hassan. So you can play on the right or left, and we can jump into information. Now, as you see here, has actually played 8 times on the left. And he has had 4 assists in 14 games, but he's actually injured, so he's not going to be playing this game. So that's actually probably good news for us. One of their their better assist players isn't actually playing this time around, so that's good news for us. And then we can also maybe jump back into the summary screen and look at Sergei Deblay. And he is one of their strikers, so just go and double check. Yep, so he's been playing pretty much at attacking midfielder right, sometimes at striker, and 1 game at attacking midfielder left. And he's also had 4 assists in 10 games. Also going to look at their left back, who's been playing at left back. So we've got Mikel Nelom. He's played 10 games. He's only got 1 assist though, so that probably shows to me that maybe they're not overloading the left flank necessarily. It's not their fullback, so that's not necessarily their fullback maybe getting in and out wide and getting crosses in. Maybe it's probably their sort of inside forward in Rilwan Hassan, who's had 4 already. So it probably indicates to me that probably had an inside forward on that left attacking midfielder left position, but not necessarily. But so there we go. That's a bit of information we've seen there. Alrighty, so goal times here. So we can see that they score and concede a lot early on. So I'm just going to make sure that our team is motivated and ready to play early on. We don't make any silly mistakes. So I'm not going to make any two major changes there. Goal types here, so mainly play shots, which is pretty consistent. Not a whole lot of headers though, so for me that would probably indicate straight away that they don't have a whole lot of crosses, given they don't have a whole lot of headers. But to confirm that, we're then going to jump into the goal assists. And I was wrong, there we go, I was completely wrong. So they've actually had 10 assists from crosses and 10 assists from through balls. So that's quite interesting. It means that they've actually had 10 assists from crosses, but only 4 from headers. So that sort of indicates that maybe they're not a great heading team, but they're actually winning maybe the second ball, the knockdown ball. And, that's where they're actually getting the goal from. So sort of from that, maybe we should be very cautious of maybe making sure our guys are defending really well. And maybe make sure that we close down quite quickly, make sure we don't give them the time to actually get that second knockdown. Maybe we should actually play defenders who have better heading. So they can get the clearances away so they don't even get the chance to have that knockdown ball. So that's sort of something we'll keep an eye out on there. Some opposition mistakes, passes, free kicks, corners, yet nothing too major there. It is quite interesting though that a lot of through balls here, generally passing would be the main one, but through balls is quite an interesting one. So through balls generally for me indicate that maybe they sit back a little bit more and maybe they actually look to play through balls in behind the defence. Maybe they've got quick strikers. So to confirm that, we're going to look at Leke James, or Lake James, who's their #1 striker. He's got 6 goals. We can see here that he's relatively quick, 14 and 15 for acceleration pace, not massively. He's got pretty decent acceleration though, anticipation. So those are sort of generally, and also sort of probably acceleration, pace, anticipation off the ball are probably the things that you're looking for through ball. Someone who can, you know, read the play so anticipate what's going to happen, and then's got the pace to actually get in behind your players, and off the ball to actually make like really intelligent moves and stuff, get into good positions to actually, you know, get into, you know, be able to receive that pass. So we keep an eye on him. Maybe we need to drop back. Maybe we need to make sure we actually sort of don't tight mark him. Maybe we need to do. Maybe we do need to tight mark him. Make sure he doesn't get the time, the space to actually get in behind us. You know, there's sort of some things that we can keep an eye on there. Alrighty, so that's pretty much what we've seen there. That's pretty much everything through there, which is good. Shots. To be honest, I don't find a huge amount of benefit in this. I'm not really quite sure how you would actually incorporate this into your tactics. So if anyone knows, I probably should do a little bit more research, but for me, like, this is obviously new in this version, so maybe I just need to get to grips with this a little bit more. So if anyone has sort of some ideas about how they actually personally use this, I'll be very, very interested to see how that is done. Alrighty, so the next thing we're going to look at here, or last one for this opposition analysis, is the comparison screen here. So I'm going to say that it is you can get some interesting information here, but be very, very cautious of, you know, betting the house on anything you actually see in here. So for example here, look in their attack area here. Look at their heading and their jumping. They've only got 11 for heading and 10 for jumping, or 10.8 for jumping. So you could actually look at that and say, well, they're not a very good heading, you know, all their strikers are rubbish at heading. But then if we actually jump back into their senior squad, if we look at Lake James, he's actually got 14 for jumping and 12 for heading. So he's actually above the average of what that screen actually told us. So my problem with this screen is you don't actually know which players in the squad are actually used, which players are actually classified as attack players, or which are classified as a midfield or defense, or stuff like that. So you actually have no control about that. So it could actually be players like classified here as attack players, but actually not used by the opposition as attack players. They could be used in midfield. So, you know, the ratings and stuff here could be a bit skewed. But in saying that, you can actually get some interesting stuff, some generally sort of interesting, you know, stats and stuff. So generally things I'm looking for are like first touch, passing, off the ball, things like that. So whether, you know, whether they're a particularly technical team. So if they are, you know, it probably indicates they're going to play the ball along the ground, but if they're not, they may play a bit long ball. Look at their defense. Maybe their defense is a bit slow, and if it is, you'll sort of go in and have a look at their individual defenders. Look at their heading stats as well. If they're not great heading, if they've got bad positioning, things like that. So again, it's probably mainly things that I can keep an eye on. Not necessarily. I probably wouldn't make many changes, if any, from information I see in this screen. I'd probably dig a little bit deeper before I actually made any changes. But it can be a bit of an indication to actually sort of get a bit of an overview about how, you know, the comparison between the two teams, and actually, you know, get a bit of an indication about how they could potentially play. So that is that one there. So that's pretty much all I look at, guys. There's not really anything else I'm going to look at. You could jump into the match screen in here. So for example, I just put this one up before the last time we actually played Utrecht, so it was for last season. And you sort of can jump in here and do like a deeper analysis. Like generally teams won't change the way they play too much, unless they change coaches and stuff. Yeah, so you actually could probably get a fair bit of information from here if you really, really want to. So that could be quite good. If you really want to go into in depth, you look at this kind of stuff here. So hopefully that has been useful for you guys. So hopefully you've seen some areas that you can keep an eye at, some changes and stuff you can make, and the ways that I actually look at opposition analysis. So it ended up being a lot longer the video than I anticipated. I'm in 19 minutes, probably 20 minutes by the time we finish. So apologies for that. But hopefully you guys have found that useful. Alright guys, let me know what you've thought about the video. Let me know how you do opposition analysis and stuff yourself. And yeah, that would be really, really good. As always, it'd be amazing if you could subscribe to the channel and like the video. That would be enormously, enormously appreciated. Alrighty guys, hope you've all had a wonderful day, and I'll see you all soon.